Morning. I'm very happy to be here at this gathering this morning. I'll be happy to tell you what Safaricom does. It take a long time doing that, but I'd like to discuss what it is that brought us here today. And I want to position Safaricom not just as the company, but I would like to speak for the industry. And that can say that I would like to speak for all ISPs, because what Safaricom does is provide the internet, which is what ISPs here in town do. In fact, I'm going to take that hat and speak from the point of view of ISP that provides a product to customers who then want to know how they're going to interact with it and how they're going to use it. Now, when I got this call from Grace, I asked her, what do you want me to speak about? Safaricom does not involve itself in what is happening at ICA and all those kind of things. So governance for us is something that is a bit, high level. What we sell is a product, and what ISP sell is a product. So I said, if I come here, what I'll do, I'll speak about governance from the eyes of a consumer, who is someone we see every day, because we interact with the product that people consume from us. They don't even care what is in the back end. They don't care about Teams, which is the fast cable that we made here in Kenya. They don't care about Easy. They don't care about SICOP. They don't care about Lion 2. Those are things that happen in the background. What they care about are speeds. What speed am I getting? They care about the experience. They care about the cost. And I think there's some governance issues that we should allow ourselves to think through as emerging from the consumers, and which I'll speak to in the next few minutes. So, having put the context, I would like to say that one of the governance issues that ought to be there to be considered from a multi-stakeholder perspective is we serve up the internet to people every day. A large section of that population is young people. What are we doing to safeguard and protect them online? We're busy increasing the speeds. We're busy getting devices out there that make it very easy for someone to access the internet. But it has come to a time when Kenya as a country needs to start taking a position around online child protection. And this is an issue that should be discussed by ISPs, by our policy advisors from the ministry, and obviously by regulators. So I would throw it out there and say one of the multi-stakeholder components that needs to be brought into this is internet should work, but it should work and be safe for a large number of our users. In thinking around that, we need a legal framework that will be used to sort of categorize what children can get through or how they can get access to it. I call to mind what happens in the film industry. We tend to have films that are categorized. There's some that can be watched by certain categories of people, adults and children. They are watershed hours. But for internet, you give your child the tablet, you don't know what they're seeing, and you don't know how they're accessing it. So I think as a government and as ISPs, we also need to start thinking of that space, because as much as we want this to be consumed, we would want it to be consumed properly and not expose our society to some of the negative aspects of the internet. So that's something I think I can put out there for discussion. The other thing which I think is an elephant in the room, and which we're going to come to grips with very soon in this country, is net neutrality. This is basically the principle that the internet should be open, and there should be no throttling, there should be access to all the content that is produced. Now for ISPs, we're in the sharp end of this discussion, because we are the ones who are being told that we should make this available to all the customers. It is obvious who is pushing this, because this is coming a lot from America, which has a stringent interpretation of net neutrality, because they are the countries that produce a lot of content, and they would want all the ISPs to dimension their networks to carry all this content. Now the question then becomes, should it be our obligation to carry this content? what are the safeguards that our own government is taking around this? This discussion is being led from the West, but Kenya should issue a consultation, in my view, for all ISPs to chip in and say, this is how we think net neutrality should be adopted in this country. Different countries are struggling with it because it's a very fluid concept. Key in this is the issue of licensing. A lot of the OTTs that operate in the space that now exploit net neutrality are domiciled in other countries. And by OTTs, I'm speaking about the usual big boys, Facebook, WeChat, Kik, all of them. So they would want to produce the content and they would want the customer to receive that content without any restriction wherever it is that they are. Are we able to do this in a growing emerging economy where we're doing less than 4 Mbps to every person in the country? What is Kenya's position on this issue? Other countries are struggling with it based on licensing. You will essentially have companies domiciled in California running a lot of the communication that happens in your country. Is it something that should be reviewed, by the regulators and the policy makers? The issues of taxation. Services that are offered by local registered companies could then be offered by companies that are overseas. Taxation becomes an issue because they're not domiciled here, they don't pay the taxes. The issues of quality of service and commitment to customer promise. These companies are not domiciled here, so they offer the same service but cannot be held to account with their own rules and regulations. So there are issues on net neutrality that I think should be brought to the fore. And all the stakeholders, the government, the ISPs, the regulators should come and take them on and have them discussed and fomented. One last thing which I'd like to touch on is security. As we provide more bandwidth and more internet to our consumers in Kenya as ISPs, we increase the opportunity for people who want to do bad things. There are countries that have been using the internet at fast speeds for a long time, and those people have sharpened and honed their skills to a very serious level. So they are looking at emerging economies with weaker security protocols and seeing this as a huge opportunity for them to come and run riot and do bad things. So as we bring the internet as ISPs in collaboration with government, a lot of thoughts should go into securing the space around which this is coming through. I know Katundu in CCK is leading a number of efforts around security, and there's a lot of discussion that happens with Safaricom, Orange, and other ISPs. But what we're saying, this is to be done at a high level because we then become more vulnerable as we get more access to the internet. This is something that should be driven by the minister, obviously, but also should be championed by each and every one of the ISPs because vulnerabilities are actually identified with the supply. If someone loses money, they will say, Safaricom, why was someone able to do this and that? They just see the supply of the service and wants to hold it to account. So I think those are issues that I would put on the table for discussion. I think they touch on quite a number of different stakeholders and people who must come to the party to make them happen. And I think the issues we need to start discussing as soon as possible in this country. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Before Victor says, I just want to say one thing. Now I know why Steve wants to leave immediately after his speech. I will catch it, don't worry. And it's good that Michael is here because I would really want him to make a comment on that. And for those of you who follow KICTANet, I think the issue of net neutrality is now coming to the fore after a lot of discussions, sometimes really one-sided. So I'm happy to see that the very important players in this issue are now coming up to the fore. Victor, over to you.
I'm actually going to make very few remarks, and I'll take my questions after lunch. I hope that day most people are not in a very good state, so the questions will be many. But I just want to speak on one paragraph on the issue of enhancing multi-stakeholder cooperation. something which I know we've been trying our best. But mine is more or less a plea to the different stakeholders that we need to start seeing different people, new stakeholders coming forward to participate. I think what has happened is that, and I'm happy to see what is happening today in Nigeria. What has happened before is that we've had the same people speaking to each other, such that when issues like what Steve has brought out come out, it's the same group of people who keep on discussing the same thing. And why this is important is that things have changed, and what we used to use the internet for has also changed drastically. What it used to impact those days has also changed. So we need to start having very new discussions, preferably, and I hope, very data-driven discussions. We need to start doing a lot more and getting data to back or some research to back some of our discussions. For example, when Steve talks on net neutrality, I don't want to get into that debate right now. What are the statistics? We need to start see where are the numbers, so that when we argue about this or that, we are able to have those facts. It's very easy for, at times in some of our discussions on the media, we throw words and paragraphs, and then that makes the multi-stakeholder cooperation difficult. And especially when, now that I know a bit about government, you know the beauty about government is that by the time you get to know it, it's when you are leaving. What I know is that the moment you start having those discussions, which are not structured and don't have very good facts, then you'll find the people you want to engage in government will step back and will continue talking and they will be listening. But if we structure it such that the discussions have a very clear structure, then we start bringing out the best from each side and be able to get the results that we are looking at. I think I'll stop there because I really have to rush to something somebody is waiting for. Then I'll be here after lunch and I can answer some of my questions. But since I'm leaving that space, you have enough space now to ask some good questions to my good friend Steve here. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Much appreciated. I will now ask Grace to make one or two remarks. Grace, we need too much about your KICTANet, so just 5 minutes on that. And then I'll ask the good lady from HIVOS to.
Okay, yeah, I'm not going to introduce myself because I already did that. Just speak on what multi-stakeholderism is all about, because at KICTANet we have been pushing for that. And for those of us who have been participating in different internet governance forums, we know this has been an issue. And why we thought it needs to be a topic for today is because Kenya already has embraced in its constitution, Article 10 of Kenya's constitution, places people at the heart of policy-making processes. And before even the 2010 constitution, actually Kenya was already known for embracing multi-stakeholderism in internet governance issues, in IT issues. And the regulator then, CCK, I think when I started engaging in these things, maybe in 2000, Moi's time, they already used to call us, then when broadcasting, they already used to call us for stakeholder engagement. But we have started seeing less and less of that. So, we are wondering where, when did the rain start beating us? And is it that, like Victor has said, he's already so used to hearing Grace, Ali, Fiona, so he needs, to hear fresh voices. But, just to say that it's very important for you to participate in this. Now, what is multi-stakeholderism? In the sphere of internet governance, this is the practice of forms of participatory democracy, which allows for those who have a stake to participate. And when we look at the internet, practically everybody has a stake in it. So when we discuss an issue, then implementation might be given to one to one of the stakeholders, say the regulator, or say, ICT authority or Fiona at TESPOC. But in the implementation, what that stakeholder needs to know is that that stakeholder is also accountable to the other stakeholders and needs some sort of reporting system. So we need to remember that the internet is distributed and it is operated on a collaborative basis. So you have users, you have service providers, you have the private sector, you have the government, and you have civil society. And unfortunately, people do not want to hear about civil society in this country. But I need to remind everyone here that a lot of the civil liberties you enjoy in this country is because of civil society's activism and what civil society has been able to push. So, for example, the civil society in internet governance, it's us. You have not seen us going to the street. You have not seen us bringing pigs to parliament, and we do constructive stuff. So I think it's wrong to equate civil society in internet governance to people who go to the streets and not listen to the views that we provide. So because of the distributed nature of the internet, it actually calls for that multi-stakeholderism in its governance. And therefore we have different stakeholders participating. What we need to know is that these different stakeholders participate for different reasons. So for example, you have the government that is there to either protect or adhere to treaties and agreements that it has signed globally. You have the businesses, the ISPs, they get to learn in a multi-stakeholder forum what are the concerns for the people. If it's issues of prices, if it's throttling of speed, then they get to hear that from the people. And of course you have civil society that brings in that voice and looks at problems from that ground and what affects ordinary people on a daily basis. But the other critical component and contribution for civil society is that it has continued to provide evidence-based policy contributions. So when Victor asks, where is the research? I know at KICTANet we have provided, for example, we did a very good research on intermediary liability. As KICTANet, and we actually said we need an intermediary protection law. But then at that time we were told, if it ain't broken, why? Fix it. Because then there was nothing. But 2 years later, we started seeing the need for intermediary protection. And in that, when we disseminated the research, we had other big organizations. Safaricom was there, we had Nation, Standard. And 1 year, in fact 1 year down the line, we started seeing them taking responsibility. So Nation, on their blog, you can't just blog and say anything. They moderate and they tell you, look, this is how you will operate on our system. Standard does the same. And Standard one time told us they have a budget for litigation. By March, it is over because they've been taken to court so many times. So they're taking responsibility. This year, I think towards the end of the year, I also saw the Star. They have taken responsibility and they say, in fact, the Star is so dominant. It says, this is how you will operate on our platform. And Safaricom did that before the elections. The regulator came up with laws. So, we are providing that. So what we are saying is that multi-stakeholderism actually recognizes the need for that sort of participation. And to just finish, I want to say that as I talk, I don't want to make multi-stakeholderism sound romantic, like it's that easy to implement. I want to say that there are very many challenges in doing that, and we would need very honest discussions on how we deal with that. So, for example, there's the issue of trust among stakeholders, and that trust comes as a result of sometimes you have bad actors in that multi-stakeholder process. So, for example, if it's a policy document that needs to be put into law, it can be given to you at a very short notice, so that you only have 1 day to contribute. Now, that's a bad practice towards that. So how do you build trust? And yet it is so important in consensus building. Then is also the challenge of stakeholder legitimacy. for example, people ask if it's civil society. We have a broad civil society. So which civil society then is going to participate in this process? If it's ISPs, what is the process? Who will participate in this decision making? And that continues to be a challenge. Then, as I said, we have the Article 10 in our Constitution that recognizes stakeholder consultation, but again, we lack institutionalization that says, this is how you do it. So we have had multi-stakeholders consultations, but it's ad hoc. Sometimes it's not transparent. So if you are viewed like you are a troublemaker, sometimes you will not be, invited to share the cake as Steve says it. So we have those challenges. So what we are saying is, do we need, and we have lawyers actually, I see a couple of our internet lawyers in this room. Do we need attendant laws to this Article 10 that then provides a framework on how we entrench multi-stakeholderism, especially in internet issues, because we've seen this, unlike other areas that probably one stakeholder can go alone or two stakeholders can go alone. In this one, it is impossible. Because if you leave out civil societies, even you will be taken to court and really delay your process. If it's civil, we will take you to court and delay your process, which is really, our courts are time consuming. And if there are other ways of doing it, bring people so that they make noise, as you call it, and then after making noise, then how do we move forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. You can see how passionate Grace is for this issue. Over to you.
Thank you. My name is Sylvia Msaladani, and I'm here representing HIVOS. I work under the Freedom and Expression program at HIVOS, and with a special focus on internet freedom. So I'll go right into who HIVOS is, and what we're all about. We're an international organization that seeks new solutions to persistent global issues. With smart projects in right places, we oppose discrimination, inequality, abuse of power, and the unsustainable use of the planet's resources. Counterbalance alone, however, is not enough. Our primary focus is in achieving structural change. This is why we cooperate with innovative businesses, citizens, and their organizations. We share a dream with them of sustainable economies and inclusive societies. HIVOS works in two main program areas. This is the Green Society, in the thematic areas of green energy and green food, and in the Open Society, in the thematic areas of women empowerment, sexual rights and diversity, transparency and accountability, and freedom of expression with a special focus on the creative economy and internet freedom, for which this meeting is all about. We work with people in places where freedom of expression is limited in our freedom of expression program. We support creative breeding grounds where ideas can come to fruition. We support independent media that reaches a wide audience through smart use of the means of communication available to them. This includes work towards an open internet. Globally, HIVOS has been working towards consolidating and safeguarding internet freedom through funding of research and global programs supporting prevention and protection under the areas of digital safety and security for online users, policy and privacy, that's in internet governance policy and privacy protection, and this pressure against online human rights abuses. So at the moment, we are developing an internet freedom program with a specific focus in the East African region. And why have we decided to get into this in East Africa? We have been working globally in the Middle East and North African region, and also in different countries globally. In the Middle East, we've been working through a program known as Internet Governance, Middle East and North Africa, also known as IGMENA. And this is a HIVOS program that brings together Voices from the MENA region on Internet Governance and Policy. The program is specifically designed to build capacity in the subject, to increase the expertise of civil actors on Internet governance issues relevant to the Arab region. We also have the Digital Defenders Partnership Program, which was established to provide rapid response to threats to Internet freedom. The partnership aims to keep the Internet open and free from emerging threats, specifically in Internet, repressive and transitional environments. In East Africa and in Kenya, we have already carried out research through some of our partners. Some of our partners in East Africa are CPESA, who carried out a research on the state of Internet freedom in Kenya and also Internet freedom in East Africa. And after conducting that research, we saw the need of developing such a program in East Africa as we have in our global office in the Netherlands and in the Arab region. And this is because we realized there are two main problems when it comes to Internet freedom in East Africa, and this is the retrogressive legislation or the lack of it, and also threats to online users. And those are the areas in which we want to be involved in. And how are we going to be involved in this? So what we will do, we will support policy and advocacy to promote Internet governance for East Africa, and Kenya is included in this. We will develop the capacity of civil society actors in East Africa, since we work with a lot of civil society, and we feel that a lot of them do not have the capacity to deal with Internet governance or Internet freedom issues, and that's why we want to build the capacity. Raise awareness for activists, bloggers, human rights defenders on privacy, safety, and security on the Internet, and also build their skills in preventing and dealing with online security threats. And finally, we will support research around regional Internet governance issues related to freedom and openness of the Internet. So that's what HIVOS is all about, and we welcome people who want to work with us, who are interested also in what we do. You're welcome to come and work with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I just picked out some interesting keywords here. Fair use policy, net neutrality, security, child pornography, multi-stakeholders, Internet freedom, privacy, human rights, and so on. I think we are really getting to a point where we are really starting to understand this whole animal called IGF. I have a few questions. I think Steve has about 10-15 minutes to go, so maybe we focus a number of our questions to Steve first. I'm going to use Harry's formula. You remember Harry's formula for questions? All right. Grace's formula. All right. Good. You'll start by introducing yourself and then your questions. For some of you, like Walu doesn't need any introductions. All right. Before you start, I have one or two just comments and maybe questions for Steve. Steve talked about, and this is actually for Steve and Michael. Actually, Michael should actually be sitting on this one. The issue of asking whether the Facebooks and the Googles of this world should actually be paying for content that is being driven through ISPs and telcos. This is something that is close to a lot of people's hearts. So Steve has made a point. I see Michael. I'm going to ask him to make one or two comments. If not on behalf of Google, personally, I can understand maybe sometimes he may not have the liberty to say one or two things. But also the issue the issue of fair use policy. Raise your hand if you bought bundles and you've been told that they're supposed to be, what's it called? Expired. I mean, I'm always asking myself this question, and the analogy may not be something that Safaricom or Orange can understand, but it makes sense. I drive into a petrol station. I filled my tank. And then something blips at that thing and said, if you don't use this by 30 days, that thing you put in there has expired. I mean, seriously. I mean, look, we must address these issues and we must understand the reasoning behind that. For some of us, we use bundles because we found it like, despite all the issues, yeah, they are cheaper. You have night bundles, and somebody decides that night starts between 10 and 6 a.m. when most of us are asleep. But I see that has changed. I just bought bundles 2-3 days ago and now it's like 3G is about $1,000, and there's no night bundle anymore. So obviously the telcos are listening. They're listening to their customers because some of the customers are now really voting with their pockets. All right? So these are issues that we must start understanding. And I think the interesting thing about internet governance is that you've got probably less than 5% of the population that really understand what's going on. But then, real change is not driven by the majority. It's driven by a few guys that you have a groundswell. So I think with those few words, let's take a few questions as we move along. Thanks.
Thanks, Ali, for bringing in the controversy and allow me to take it up a bit. A notch higher. My name is Benson Karanja. I work with the public sector team at Dimension Data. We focus on citizens. Victor wanted some numbers, so allow me to give him some of these numbers, courtesy of CA. Out of 43 million, 33 million of Kenyans have mobile phones. Out of 26 million Kenyans, 16 million are increasing. I think the increment is around something to do with 400,000 per quarter, are increasingly accessing internet through the mobile devices. So here's my question. Having had listened to all of us speak this morning, and also looking at my colleague from .AE, I wonder, from a diversity point of view, if our game plan for internet usage and interaction with citizens is demographic friendly in this country. How many of us are above 26 and above in age? Now, this is statistical in nature, because in this country, 75% of our citizens are below 25 years. And this is the group that is basically driving the growth in internet. So I'm starting to think, and I'm thinking intermediaries, so Safaricom, here, this is coming to you. Isn't it time for very low, bold new services, focusing on the child, for example, so that my daughter can get in touch with Safaricom as an intermediary, but on a safer platform. Okay, in networks, we can call them VPNs, for example, right? But this is a different product, particularly for children, that basically promotes child protection. Okay, it's indeed time from a policy perspective that we basically come out and basically say, especially now that we're thinking about education. And by the way, we release a global threat intelligence report every year. And one of the things, as I mentioned later, one of the things that we realized this particular year, because we're now currently handling 40% of internet traffic globally, is that the most areas that are now being hit is education and health. And now we're starting to talk about education, right? So
sorry.
I'm going to
have to interrupt you because we're taking questions. So please, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. My name is Wadu from Multimedia University.
So what would that also?
Of course, we have straight to the point. 2 questions.
Brilliant.
One for Steve and the other one for Grace. On net neutrality, there are 2 sides of that debate. One side, of course, the operators do not want the content providers to ride on the infrastructure without significant compensation. But in Kenya, we're beginning to see the other argument where the operators are choosing content providers that will ride on the infrastructure for free. For example, you allow Facebook or Wikipedia access so that the customer does not pay. And that in itself is a problem because the operator is favoring some of the content provider. That is a big issue. Question for Grace on multi-stakeholder. And I think Victor alluded to this. Same faces, same topics, same decisions. Multi-stakeholder arrangement is supposed to be like our solution. But if you dig deeper, you might discover that it's biased. The same characters attend the global IGN, the same characters arrive at similar decisions. How can we address that issue? Because you cannot go around saying multi-stakeholder is like the most favorable solution to these issues, when in actual sense you might find that it's been hijacked by a group of 5 people.
It's a good point, Father.
Good
I hope
morning.
you guys are taking.
Good morning. My name is Matiangi. I work for the International Society. I have 2 questions. One for Chege and one for Grace. I have to say I'm curious but not surprised that Safaricom has a position on net neutrality. I would like to hear whether your definition of net neutrality is based on the American definition of net neutrality, because I believe that their definition of net neutrality is founded on legacy issues in terms of how infrastructure was developed in the US, and which is very different from the way we developed infrastructure in the region. So what is our definition of net neutrality? My second question goes to Grace. The IGF has actually issued a call for policy, input on policy for connecting the next year. And I would like to know whether we, through the Kenya National IGF, are going to submit contributions towards or rather give inputs to the policy document on how to connect the next year. Thank you.
Chege, just a quick one. I know Steve needs to rush somewhere, so maybe what we'll do is anyone who has a question for Steve, maybe start fast. And let's keep questions maybe 2-1, because I know the line is going to move, it's going to grow. You have a question for Steve? Let's be precise. Yeah.
My name is Steve Mambo from Wilbo Group Limited, an IT governance and cybersecurity company. And mine is on an area that I think my namesake Steve has alluded to in terms of safety for children. As much as we are pushing internet speeds, we want our young children to be able to access internet. We are not giving them education, or rather empowering them on some of the threats that are available when they access internet. So my question more is on what actions on this forum, any other forum, what actions are being taken to safeguard our children when they're online?
Thank you. Grace, she's been missing in action. So, Grace,
thank you. My question to speak really quickly is on this net neutrality position that Safaricom has, that we are very happy to hear that there is a position. Is it something we can add our voices to? Is it something that is very close? You know, is there space for interrogation on your position? And just generally, is there space for, other than, I know the city is always on Twitter, but other than that, is there a space where you could have conversations with them, consumers or the customers about products?
Ruben.
My name is Njonjo. I'm a Google fellow, police fellow, and I'm affiliated with KICTANet. This session today was more about multistakeholderism and inclusiveness, and how the different stakeholders can be engaging with each other going forward, not just at the idea. I want to know if this session has been able to achieve that. When we get out of this meeting, how will I be able to talk to the business community if I'm a consumer? How will the civil society be able to talk to government? Is there a platform for the different stakeholders to be able to engage with each other going forward?
Thanks, Kibuga, for sort of trying to redirect us to ensure that we achieve what we want to achieve for this session.
I'll be really, really quick. I've seen how So my question is for you, Steve, because you're looking at also, I'll throw Michael Morogi a bit under the bus, because that's the kind of person that I am. It's great, all this private sector entrance into the public space. My question is, the information that private companies are holding, public, like even private citizen information, what where is doing it on that? Thanks.
Sorry, did you introduce yourself?
No. I was trying to be brief. My name is Mendi and I work in this space.
For? HIVOS. Okay. Okay. This session, I mean, I guess the issue of multi-stakeholders is quite a passionate one. So sometimes maybe some of these questions may not sort of answer the issue of inclusiveness and diversity. But I think the fact that we have a very diverse, we have Victor, we have Safaricom here, we have HIVOS, and we have Grace, basically speaks a lot towards trying to achieve that inclusiveness and diversity. So without much further ado, I'm going to ask Steve to jump in.
Thanks, Ali, and thanks for all the people who asked the question. I thought this was a good topic to speak about because it's something that is affecting us and no one's talking about it. We're just reading about it, we're skirting around the issue, and no one knows what to do about it. And I think it would be remiss for this kind of gathering not to speak about net neutrality. Now, I just want to make clear that Safaricom does not have a stated position on net neutrality. And if we have one, I'm going to articulate it now. Our view is a questioning view. A lot of countries are grappling with this issue around the world. And I really wish Victor was here, or the cabinet secretary. But we seem not to be doing much about it. We seem to be reading about it and then thinking someone will figure it out. I think as a country we need to take the step and say we need to take this thing head on. and discuss what is our view on net neutrality as a country. A lot of countries have tackled this by actually doing deep consultations. And I'll start, and I'll repeat what I said at the start, that this concept of net neutrality is flowing from America, very specifically America, because that society is driven by internet, it's driven by content, and therefore certain things have to work for the content producers to keep on, keeping their businesses going. People are no longer watching static TV. People want to watch what they want to watch when they want to watch it. There are companies that are huge in terms of capitalization that actually deliver all their content through internet. We all know about Netflix. Now, for Netflix to have a business proposition, it needs at the back end to have the MNOs and the ISPs forced to carry that content without prioritizing it, without throttling it, without blocking it, or without charging a premium for the access to that content. So they go and lobby and they get Congress to support them and they get views passed that net neutrality should be what is done. So we have the concept of open internet and it starts flowing east. UK has a position. The position used to be you can have your content accessed by your customer, but customers can be prioritized based on what they pay. France are grappling with the same issue. I think last year they told Skype that Skype has to register in France for them to offer services. We all know Skype, we use Skype. They felt Skype as an unlicensed service provider was doing things outside its jurisdiction, which should be done within its jurisdiction. Germany is also grappling with this issue. India has, they've got one of the best regulators, I believe, in the emerging economies. And what they've done, they sent out a detailed consultation document that asks all the right questions to all the right people in a multi-stakeholder environment, to the government, to ISPs, to academia, to students, so that they can have an understanding of what India will do with that position that is coming towards us. Why is this important for emerging economies? All of us are busy building our networks now. We're not like America or Europe where these networks are 30 or 40 years old, where broadband is actually almost a right. We have a very aspirational position here in Kenya. The strategy document that we launched the other year with the Communications Authority speaks about every Kenyan having access to 5 Mbps of broadband speed in the rural area. And that's by 2017. Are we able even to speak about that? That's in rural areas. We're not even talking about the city. The city is supposed to be 30 Mbps by 2017. So for us to even approach those kind of speeds, I will not even tell you what the speeds should be between 2018 and 2022. I mean the fast-forward speeds. But it's there in the strategy document. But that gap will only be closed by ISPs and MNOs that build out the infrastructure to make it possible. Now, when you're doing the investment and the capital deployment for networks, and then you have this content that everyone is entitled to receive without being throttled, you then have a problem. Because you cannot dimension everything to be available to everyone at the same time. What you would need is a lot of investment to achieve that position. So to go back to Safaricom's position, we are questioning and saying, what are we doing about this thing? Can we start having this discussion at the highest level possible? Because soon enough, Mike Murungi, who is here with Google, Facebook in Kenya as well, Netflix will come to Kenya, I can assure you that. They're already, doing recce's in this country. But if they come here and say we have a huge cache in Nairobi, maybe to service in Central Africa, and then they say, you all remember the internet has to be free and open, it will place a huge burden on MNOs and ISPs to create the infrastructure to make that possible. The discussion in the past, and Ali has alluded to this, has been, should there be a payoff? Should the content generators pay the network providers for carrying the content? That's a thorny issue. It's been tossed around many forums. I think by the time our minister went to Dubai 2 years ago, he had a very clear message which we had crafted for him. But the fact is, I don't think MNOs are asking for compensation, or at least in Safaricom's case, we are not asking for compensation. But we are asking for an opportunity to allow us to be able to carry the content that we can carry to the customers we can carry at the time when we can do it. And what that means is not to regulate and enforce open internet to the strict and very high levels that the Americans have placed on net neutrality, because we're still rolling out our networks. But we're open to taking other views, and I think we should all put our views together as a country and ask ourselves, where are we as a country, what can we do, and to what extent can we allow the inflow of content of networks. So for everyone who had asked about net neutrality, I've tried to address your issues about whether payments should be done. Ali, you had asked that. Walubengo had said that we are already zero-rating some services. This is true, because this is the reality of internet in emerging economies. There are some sites and some portals that you want to be given an opportunity to gain traction. Wikipedia is there to gain access to information. And for education and for young researchers, it's an important tool. So some of the networks in Kenya are actually zero-rating access to it. Why? Because in our reality, it is important to empower students. And we're not favoring Wikipedia, we are thinking about Kenyan students. And this is a kind of robust thinking that needs to be employed, and not sit back and say, oh, hang on, who's the other guy? Will Netflix come and complain that, we're giving free access and not access to their thing? And we want to charge customers a premium to access Netflix, as opposed to accessing Wikipedia portals or other education portals. Those are the real questions we should ask. There are things we actually want our people to gain access to, because we are not at the same level as other developed economies. But as a country, I think it is time that we sit down, set out a consultation document, either at the ministry level, together with the Communications Authority, but let's have a discussion about this issue. Let's domesticate this issue. Let's know what we're going to do about it, instead of skirting around the issues. We all know the power of the American brands to lobby. They're extremely powerful, and they can bring their reality here to Kenya. But would it be the right thing? So I hope I've addressed a lot of the questions around net neutrality in that way. On the issue of data bundles, fair usage policy, expiration of data, this is a fun issue, but one we welcome, especially at Safaricom. Now let me put on the Safaricom hat. We have learned a lot from our customers about pricing of data. What we keep on doing is going out to the market, putting our ear to the ground, listening, and then when we hear something which we think can work, we will respond. The issue about night bundles has been dealt with at the moment. Our own data showed that there were a lot of people who were using it, but they were using it at a certain time. And it was free. That night bundle was free. But then we said, a whole lot of people are thinking you're giving us something free which we can't use, because we have to stay up awake, and after a long day, you need to go home and rest. So what we said is, we're going to give you the same free element, but we're going to put it at any time. You can use it at any time of the day. And that's what we rolled out. As soon as we rolled it out, the people used to stay awake at night saying, what happened to the night bundles? They were very nice. So the fact is, you can never please everyone, but what you have to strive to do is get it right for the majority of your customers. And the feedback we're getting right now is really, really positive, and we think we're on the right path. Another thing I'd like to mention, and there are very, very bright people here, and I want to challenge you. I want you to go and find out the cost of data in Kenya versus the cost of data in other countries. And come on, help me. We have the most affordable data in Africa. We have fast internet. We have almost 850,000 if there's such a thing, Mbps available to Kenyans. It's just a question of getting it to the last mile. We have 4 cables at our coast, and I think more coming, but with those 4 cables, we have a lot of capacity and a lot of internet coming through. What needs to be the focus of this government, and I wish again Victor was here, is how do we close the last mile? How do we make it affordable for the MNOs and the ISPs to get that data to the ground? And a lot has been done. If we check what the price of data was, not even a long time ago, 5 years ago, and what it is right now, and then you add in the corresponding increase in speed, because that speed doesn't come for free. It comes at a huge capital investment. You have faster internet at among the lowest price in Africa. And that's why we're seeing that Kenya is a hotbed of innovation. And not anything else. So we keep on learning in terms of pricing. On the demography of usage of the internet, Benson Karanja, I'd actually like to surprise you. The 26 plus are not heavy users of the internet. These are serious people. They check their emails, they maybe once in a while update their Twitter or Facebook. The young guys do not call. When they buy bundles and they have components of voice minutes, data MBs, and SMS, the SMS and the MBs go. The voice minutes just keep on accruing. They are actually always just on their phone. They have very interesting habits, and we have to plan around them. And that is why the first thing that I mentioned is, as a country, we also need to start thinking about online child protection, because we have seen the huge uptake that demography has and the appetite they have for data. So again, it's for us, to start thinking how do we want this access to be done. Then we make it possible for all the ISPs to follow the same rules, so that we ensure that we're growing a society that is data savvy, yes, but has the morals in the right place and have the protection that they need on the internet. So I think I've answered a lot of the questions. Grace, can you add your voice to Safaricom's net neutrality position? Let's talk. Let's have a national debate. Let everyone put in their comments. Let's come up with a position on net neutrality. Mendi, you asked an interesting question, if I captured correctly, about the data that MNOs have, confidential information. I didn't get the import of your question, but I can just say this. Privacy issue.
The issue of privacy, the issue where we're not sure who is accessing our data, especially now, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek, especially now since Safaricom is part and parcel of the security apparatus in this country.
Okay, that's a very easy question for me to answer, and every MNO will tell you the same thing. Your information is sacrosanct. It is well kept, and it is virtually inaccessible to anyone who tries to get it from outside. Mr. Katundu or CA would be able to tell you that they regularly check how possible it is to get access to that information, and it's virtually impossible. And there's legislation around this as to what information we need to keep, how long we need to keep it, how we can share it with third parties, because there are times when it is shareable. When conducting criminal investigations, and we have a court order. But a lot of this information is kept very securely. And in Kenya, the notch is a bit higher because we have high prevalence of mobile money usage. So because of that, it is even more important for that information to be kept private. And that is managed between the Communications Authority and the central bank. So there's a lot of safety guards that are put in there around that information. However, what I'd just like to point out, in this world where people use a lot of apps, people don't know they're giving away a lot of the information. Every app almost requires you to put in your phone number or an email. You do not then know who has access to your information and where they're sitting and what they're doing with this information. So a lot of people get confused when they start thinking, my information got to someone from Safaricom, yet they've been registering for 100 apps or every flashing pop-up that comes up on our web page. So that information is out there, and what we're constantly doing is requesting our customers to be careful how they manage their numbers and their PINs, because then you expose yourself and it becomes a difficult thing for us to address. It has nothing to do with someone having access to that information from legitimate sources from MNOs, but it's a challenge because that line is blurry. A lot of apps are becoming very usable, almost interchangeably with normal MNO services.
Phil, thank you very much. I think I'll allow Matilda to make one quick comment on privacy.
Yeah. My name is Matunda. We better KICTANet, guys. Really, very quickly, we don't have a privacy law in this country. Because privacy is not simply who accesses what. It's also that me was giving you my information of control on how to use it. That you have my permission, say, to use it the way you have asked me to use it. To be interesting to look at the kind of contract, the terms of agreement that we sign on, say, with the people that collect information, the narcomands, Safaricom, and other players who have a lot of personal information at their disposal nowadays. The second point is, you talked about testing the systems to ensure they are secure. The law, because it's lacking, would require that there be a third-party attestation to that. Because if you are testing yourself, you can tell us whatever that which you feel will not undermine. So, just wanted to make those 2 points. One, the legislation is not here. In fact, in Africa, South Africa, I think Tunisia, have privacy legislation. Secondly, because of that lack of requirement of that law, there is no requirement on your part to continually demonstrate this. And that me, as a customer, I can ask, say, what information you have got, how are you using it, and then in case of security violation, that you notify me. Those details are not there. And I think as part of the outcome of this forum, we should be driving towards that end. Privacy legislation, law that comes with it. Thank you.
I couldn't agree with you more, Matilda. Thank you very much. These privacy issues are becoming major discussion points now, and we need to bring them down to the local level.
If I can just say one remark I leave you.
You must go fast. Can I get
yes, I'll talk very fast.
Bundles?
You need to buy them. So to Matunda's point, and I'm just chatting with Grace here, we've been pushing for that privacy deal forever. Because in the absence of legislation, what you use is a few bits of legislation that are there, and they don't maybe address end-to-end. Such as what you're saying, that I have given you my information voluntarily, but what are you doing with it? So the part that we're using is what we are mandated as licensees of the Communications Authority to keep information confidential. And the checks that are done are not done by ourselves. They're done by the Communications Authority. In the case of M-Pesa, they're done by the central bank. So those checks are robust and they're independent from Safaricom. So we're not telling you what we want to tell you. But I do agree with you. We give our information everywhere. Every time you go to a building, you write your name, your ID, and your phone number. Every time you take your suit to the dry cleaner, they have your name, your ID, and your phone number. Everyone has the information, but we don't know what they're doing with it. And that's why a lot of people come to us and complain, and we say, honestly, no one got the information from us. But there's so many points. If I went to this building downstairs and I just took the book, how many numbers would I have? With correct ID and correct name, at least of your names. There's a lot. There's a lot of information floating out there. We had that problem when the last elections were happening. Some people were taking the M-Pesa registration books and surreptitiously photoing them. Yeah? Because they then have your name and your phone number, and then they spam you with information and say, please vote for Steve. Yeah, there's a lot of information out there. We just need to have a way to warehouse it and control it and own it. But in the absence of that, the assurance I'm giving is that MNOs are doing it the way they are licensed to do. And with those very many words, I thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate it. I just want to recap this and maybe make one or two rejoinders. What Steve has said is very, very important. I mean, we haven't even started talking about how much information we leave on social networks. You know, I made a point a few days ago. In a marketplace, there are three key components: the buyer, the seller, and the product. And if you are not the buyer and the seller, who are you? You're the product. And then you sit and say, how did this person get my information? And you just come out of Facebook and left a statement there. The relationship is complicated. Guess what? Facebook is using that information to target you. Okay, I think that's really, really important for us to note. On the perspective of zero rating and all that, I know Steve has left, but I think we need to be honest with ourselves on zero rating issues. When Facebook, I mean, I really would have loved to ask him and say, if we are zero rating Wikipedia or Gmail, why are we not zero rating Gafla, Mathuri Resa, Nation Media? This is local content. We need to be asking ourselves these really tough questions, because we cannot continuously continue consuming foreign content and sit in these forums and continue to complain. All right. Last but not least, this issue of broadband. It's our responsibility, all of us. It's not just us sitting back and saying government, Google, Facebook, Safaricom, Orange. Those guys are driven by the profit motive. We must, as citizens, start really making a point. When we talk about, when Steve talks about, and I'm happy for Steve to hear what I say, we are being recorded. When Steve talks about high-speed internet, I'm wondering whether he's talking about Kenya or Nairobi. I mean, we have to be honest. Maybe you can answer as Tesco, because if I go to my home counties of Mombasa, Kilifi, and Lamu, let me tell you something. In Lamu, I can start loading something on my page, go fishing, come back, it's still loading. So, is it the responsibility of Tesco? Is it the responsibility of the government? Is it because the issue about whether it's viable, sometimes sort of we are putting the cart before the horse, because once upon a time there was a country called Kenya that did not have SMS, that did not have M-Pesa, and everybody thought that the mobile phone was the preserve of the rich. Then we have today. Okay, so with that, I will ask, you want to make a rejoinder on that? Or are we good?
I think we can take a break.
Okay, fantastic. We are done at 11:30. Thank you very much.
Before we break, there are issues that were raised about.
I think we need to break. Maybe we can come back.
One quick point before we forget about it. For multi-stakeholders, here is what I'm hearing in government. Sometimes they work for them. They're saying, get organized, come, as agreement. That is important. Lastly, the issue of access in Lamu, talk about national access fund. Target that.
That's a story for another day. Thank you, Matunda. Thank you very much, everyone. We're on a break. And